Hello, everybody. This is Patrick Abalos from Cocktail Classified. Today, I have my friend in Raymond Edwards, who is the global brand educator from the House of Angostura, talking a little bit about the Queen's Park Swizzle, his history in the industry, and a little bit about his background. So, welcome, Raymond.
Oh, thank you so much, Patrick, for having me.
Awesome. Welcome to the show. So, kind of give us a little debrief on who you are, what you do.
Oh man, well, first thing first, I want to say thank you for having us, for having me, and the House of Angostura as well. Our partners here in Houston, of course, in the U.S., our distributing team, Talado Wines and Spirits, and of course, Southern Glaciers. So I'm from the beautiful island of Trinidad and Tobago,
Yeah.
the home of the House of Angostura, the only distillery on the island of Trinidad. But as chief brand educator at the House of Angostura, my role really engulfs or moves around education.
Yeah.
And brand education around all our brands at the House of Angostura. Our flagship brand being Angostura Bitters, this is where our journey began. And of course, our amazing portfolio of award-winning rums and Amaro. So my role basically is to educate or highlight the versatility and mixability of all our brands at the House of Angostura.
That's awesome. How long have you been with the company?
Oh man, Patrick, too long.
Yeah.
Too long. We have a saying in Trinidad. We have a saying at the distillery: when you don't smell the aromatics of the bitters anymore, it tells you how long you've been working at the distillery. I don't smell the aromatics anymore because I'm accustomed to that now. Yeah. But just close to 15 years.
Okay.
I've been at the company at the House of Angostura.
That's awesome. Did you start kind of at the bottom, or did you work your way up to a position you're in now?
Oh man, I actually started in food and beverage.
Okay.
So many. That's why I'm so passionate about bartenders and hostesses and waiters and everyone within that space, because I came from that space.
Yeah.
Now, many years before that, I was a professional footballer. This was like my crazy dream, to represent club and country at the highest level.
Yeah.
But then football wasn't going the way that I wanted it to flow, and my fallback pretty much was hospitality.
Okay.
There was just this natural inclined ability to meet, greet, seat, service that I just loved and really appreciated.
Yeah.
And that's how I went into the hospitality industry, but I started to compete and take a part in a lot of mixology competitions.
Okay.
And Angostura, being in that spirit realm, was a massive sponsor of one of the major competitions that I took part in.
Okay.
The Angostura Global, as well as Tastes of the Caribbean, which is where all the bartenders and chefs, top chefs in the Caribbean, meet on one stage in Miami to compete. It's like the Caribbean Culinary Olympics.
That's cool.
And I won, actually.
Okay.
I won. And, the House of Angostura, seeing and appreciating my talent and my craft and passion for spirits, for rum, for customer service and hospitality, saw the opportunity and gave that opportunity to me.
That's awesome.
15 years ago. So, the rest is history.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you've been a bartender before.
Oh yeah.
So what made you kind of make the switch from being a bartender to taking the more of this brand educator role within Angostura?
Well, the thing is that I come from a small tropical island. That is the last two islands. Pretty much, we had the last two islands in the Caribbean chain, Trinidad and Tobago. But Trinidad as an island don't have much of a cocktail culture. We have more of a drinking culture.
Yeah.
Trinis love to drink. And in Trinidad, we say, when the rum done, or when the rum is finished, the lime or the party is finished. Because in Trinidad, we don't party, we lime.
Okay.
We don't hang out, we lime.
We lime.
We lime.
Okay.
So when we're liming, it's a little bit different in Trinidad. We don't have much of a cocktail culture. We drink everything that there is to drink, however, which is rum. However, when that party or lime is finished, we Trinis, we go home.
Okay.
The thing was, I really wanted to start a cocktail culture.
Okay.
in Trinidad, and Angostura being the foundation for not just cocktails on a whole. The definition of the word cocktail had Angostura, had bitters in it, had Angostura in it, pretty much. But more importantly, I really wanted to help elevate or generate a cocktail culture, aligning myself to Angostura with bitters and of course rum, and more modernly Amaro, really gave me that opportunity that I needed to really get the message out there and help to change the dynamic within Trinidad and Tobago and of course the region. But more importantly, in those earlier years, my role basically was to assist my marketing team in Angostura in those earlier years to help elevate the image of rum.
Okay.
Because Trinidad on a whole is a market that is known for experiential marketing. We do a lot of parties, we have a lot of events. And let's say, for example, Patrick, you go to an event, and let's say this event is $100 a ticket.
Yeah.
And it may be costly. $100, it's a premium event. But when you go to this premium event, what are you going to drink?
Right.
Are you going to drink rum, which is like standard, which is everywhere? Or are you going to drink the things that you're not accustomed drinking, like maybe whiskey, maybe a wine, champagne? So the reality was, or my task was, how do you get consumers? Because rum don't drink itself. People drink rum. So how do you get the people to appreciate your product or your brand? How do you help to elevate your brand? This was my role.
Okay.
And we did this through an intensive cocktail program called Rum Cocktails by Angostura, which really helped us to elevate the brand as well as assist us in changing the image of rum.
Okay. And this was specific to Trinidad. Have you tried anything outside the U.S. as far as experimental marketing that you've done?
Well, in respect to cocktail culture, the U.S. is very, very proud and has a really, really great history when it comes to cocktail culture. Today is what? Today is Repeal Day.
Yes.
In the U.S. Prohibition is no longer evident, and everyone is happy to drink, and of course bartenders are happy to reintroduce themselves to the bar. Yeah. But in Trinidad, the dynamic is very, very different. It's very different in Trinidad. So the goal was, help elevate this cocktail culture, but more importantly, share the story, the history, the legacy of Angostura, and have this message be echoed throughout the region and in extension throughout the globe.
Right. That's awesome. So as far as Trinidad, as far as cocktail culture there in Trinidad, so when you came in, you kind of did the experimental marketing, you kind of helped build the culture there at Trinidad. Did you see some kind of ROI from when you started now, from the beginning to now? Have you seen a transfer of what the culture is?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the thing was, I started to become a little frustrated because, I'm very passionate about mixology and cocktails. And when you are, you're in a space where you're not seeing a lot of, cocktails being designed and being promoted from that aspect, because we don't like to conflict or complicate our drink, especially for Trinidadians. In the region, we will have like Angostura 1919 rum. Okay. The main staple for that rum is coconut water. And just as a daiquiri, this is the holy grail of all rum drinks, it's only predominantly three ingredients. Yep. It's a simple. We are very simple drinkers when it comes to drinking and enjoying spirits. But more importantly, I really wanted to elevate or promote a cocktail culture. And a good friend of mine from Las Vegas by the name of Tony Abuganim, Tony, also known as the modern mixologist, he sort of plugged in the reality of what is needed or what should be done. And he said to me one day, he was in Trinidad, he was visiting for an amazing video production that he did. And he said to me, Raymond, if you want to create a cocktail culture here in Trinidad, as well as the region, all you need to do is bring back the lost and forgotten Queen's Park Swizzle.
Oh yeah. Well, that cocktail is delicious.
This was like 12 years ago,
Okay.
Patrick. And no one in Trinidad knew what a Queen's Park Swizzle was. Well,
Okay.
most people didn't.
Yeah.
Most bartenders didn't know what it was. But this cocktail was the king or queen of all swizzles.
Yeah.
From a category, swizzling as a category, it was the master of all swizzles. And it was a cocktail or classic that was created in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Not in Barbados or Jamaica, but right there in Trinidad, at the world-renowned Queen's Park Hotel, which was the world's number one, which was considered the number one hotel in the region in those earlier years.
That's cool. It's very interesting when we talk about cocktail culture, how much was cured at hotel bars.
Oh,
And how, I guess, here specifically in Houston, I don't know, but in LA and Miami and like New York, you have these really killer hotel bars.
oh yeah.
But here in Houston, specifically in Texas, I'm not sure if it's a cultural thing, but people don't really give relevance to hotel bars.
No.
So it's very interesting that you brought that up, how if you look back into the classic cocktails, like we have the Queen's Park Swizzle, which is named after a hotel. We have a couple other classic cocktails that were all made in hotels.
Oh yeah, the Singapore Sling,
Yeah.
the Pina Colada,
Yeah.
at the Hilton in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
The Raffles Hotel, pretty much in Singapore, the Singapore Sling was created. So in the earlier years, let's say the late 1800s, early 1900s, a lot of these classics that were created during the golden age of the cocktail, a lot of them were featured and created at hotel bars.
Yep.
Hotel bars were the place to be.
Yeah.
And hotel bars in those earlier years tailored for a very elite group as well. The one who has the budget to be able to frequent themselves or to make themselves present or frequent themselves at these outlets. I think really helped to not just elevate the category, but give a sense of belonging to hotel bars and of course that particular space. This changed over the years, tiki bars having their own template, having their own look and feel.
Yeah.
And this was pretty much in the mid 1900s as we move into the spritzer years.
Yeah.
But that was your original template. A lot of craft and prominent bartenders in the earlier years, this is where they plied their trade, at hotel bars.
Yep.
Some of the best.
That is very true. Going back to what you said earlier about like simplistic cocktails, so one thing I've noticed is kind of a shift more towards going back to the classics. So we're talking 3-4 ingredient cocktails.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen that in your travels kind of becoming more of a trend in the industry? Because I know you travel a lot, so have you seen it specifically that trend coming and continuing? Or you see it going back to more of where we're becoming inventive and we're doing a bunch of different ingredient cocktails, like we're talking more than 4 cocktail ingredient cocktails?
I think even just before COVID-19, the template was always simplicity, and there are two very important components. Even Tony, he taught me as well, which was never trust a skinny chef, Raymond. You must taste everything.
Yes, 100%.
I know, and you see bartenders create cocktails today and they don't taste it. I know, probably because they made it a million times.
Yeah.
But the reality is, ingredients, they vary, and they change through time. But simplicity has been the key as we become a little bit more inclined and aligned to this particular cocktail period that we're living in. It's called the resurgence of classics. And this resurgence, or this bring back to the fold of these classic templates, these cocktails were simplified. 2 to 3 ingredients. The classic martini. And this is whereby the focus is not just on the creation of these classics, but also the importance of the ingredient that goes in and the quality of those ingredients.
Yeah.
Now, why cocktails really played a very important role in the earlier years and why these ingredients were mixed in, it wasn't only to create a special ingredients or a dynamic flavor. Sorry, guys.
You good?
Take this off.
No need to apologize.
Oh, sorry.
I hope you got that.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so where was I? Sorry about that. Where was I? I lost my
We
train of
were
thought.
talking about foreign grain cocktails and how it's kind of coming back to. You were talking about the classic martini.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So simplicity is the key, and one of the reasons why this particular approach was evident in those early years was it wasn't just to create an amazing experience or create a great craft expression or piece or masterpiece, but also understanding the quality of the ingredients being used in those earlier years.
Yeah.
There were a lot of adjustments being made based on these ingredients. Now with ingredients and of course brands paying a lot of emphasis on the quality of the ingredients that is being brought forward. For example, at House of Angostura, we pride ourselves on excellence and perfection.
Yeah.
The reflection of the quality, the craftsmanship, and the work that goes into our bitters. It's the same level of enthusiasm and effort that goes into our rums and amaro. So now you have a better quality product, a better quality spirit.
Yeah.
There isn't any real aggression to having to combine 4, 5, and 6 ingredients when you can just do 3.
Yeah.
And of course, simplicity is the key. It helps consumers as well to be able to taste and be able to highlight flavors. But more importantly, it helps bartenders themselves to be more creative. You know, start very, very simple on that plane, of course, and then you can always pull out ingredients, add ingredients in, and of course mix and match.
Yeah.
So it's a whole it's a combined effort, of course, by bartenders and the appreciation by consumers that allows us to create cocktails and create things in this particular template and in this way and this style.
Yeah, that's for sure. A lot of the things that I talk about, especially with bartending, is it's our job to make sure we're connecting what we're creating to what the guest wants, what the base spirit is. Because a lot of times, what I've seen is we try and be too. You put too many flavors in it, and then you get something that's muddy. Where we go back to again what we're talking about is you have the 3 or 4 ingredient banger cocktails. Taking, say, for example, the rum and figuring out how to highlight it with something that's local and sustainable.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know you actually work on a farm out in Trinidad. You own a farm, right? So,
oh man,
how have you taken sustainability and using local produce into cocktails there in Trinidad what you're doing with Angostura?
So it's all about presentation and the ability to be able to elevate. Create great experiences for guests. And this is aligned or it's tied into presentation. How do you present this particular cocktail or masterpiece?
Yeah.
When we build the Queen's Park Swizzle, it looks almost layered. It's a beautiful representation of a Trinidad classic. That you can see the green almost into the red and bronze color, and a little bit of yellow. It looks almost like an Ethiopian flag. But the reality is, because of it's well built, well stacked, it gives you that beautiful, really, really beautiful presentation. Now, having a 20-acre farm, and you're thinking like, where do you get the time, Raymond? You're always flying, you're always traveling. How do you get the time to be on the farm? Well, my dad does the bulk of the work. Yeah. But in respect to sustainability, we try to have zero waste or use as much, or we try to capture as much as we can get out of fruit and vegetables. In the Caribbean, we have a wide variety of fresh fruits and vegetables. The sad reality is that this is not incorporated a lot into cocktail programs the way Mexico has.
Yeah.
And hence the reason why the top 20 bars in the world is from Mexico City.
Yep.
But what I usually do is, for example, we have a lot of citrus, a lot of limes, a lot of fresh oranges. What we do is that we will pick those during the height season, and we will cut and dehydrate.
Okay.
So cut, dehydrate. The bits that are cut off from the limes, like the tips,
Okay.
are all used to make oleosaccharum.
Okay. Yeah.
So nothing goes to waste.
Okay.
And the remains from that goes back into compost.
Okay.
So what we do on the farm is that we have like a 360 approach. Even when we dry pineapples, so there's a special varietal in Trinidad called a honey loaf. No, sugarloaf.
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 Oh, okay.
And sugarloaf, I say honey loaf.
Yeah.
It's the same, right?
The same. I mean, you're talking about a sweetener.
Bro, it's gorgeous. It's
Yeah.
really, really beautiful, well-tasting pineapple that grows in Trinidad. And we would dry those and make like a chip.
Okay.
It's called Butter Race Farm. It's like a little chip.
Okay.
But this chip, again, the skins of the pineapple, we use those to make juice.
Okay.
This time of the year is Christmas time, and we use a lot of sorrel or Florida hibiscus.
Yeah.
Florida jamaica.
Yeah.
Also known as hibiscus.
Yeah.
We take the leaves or the flower of the sorrel, and we will steep in hot water. It gives you that beautiful red liquid.
Okay.
And we would add local spices. Caribbean is the spice of the world, man.
Yeah,
so
okay.
nutmeg, clove, a little bit of anise inside there, a little bit of sugar, some bay leaf, and you allow that to simmer. Man, you have sorrel juice like no other.
Okay.
And then sometimes we add rum to that. Sorrel and rum, a beautiful, perfect combination. So what we do on the farm is that we try to make use of all the fresh fruits and vegetables. Every aspect of this fruit goes into production, so that we end up with zero waste. When it comes to fertilizers, it helps to cut that cost of acquiring fertilizers because everything goes back into natural compost.
Okay.
Now, I grew up in the countryside, in a beautiful community called Toko.
Okay.
It's on the northeastern end of Trinidad, but it's a small fishing and farming village. So being close to the earth and, of course, to the ocean has always been very, very close to my heart, is what I grew up into. And I really, really appreciate that aspect of what I do, because it really helps to maintain the grays in my hair.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
And keep me well recharged.
Yeah.
Keep me well recharged.
That's awesome. So having grown up in a fishing village, have you noticed moving into the city where you have your apartment, have you noticed like there's the cultural difference between living in that small town and then all of a sudden now you're thrown into a cultural hub?
Man, it's crazy different. It's there's so many things that we do in the countryside that is almost sacrilegious in the city. In the countryside, everyone has a nickname. So Patrick, you wouldn't be called Patrick, you'll be Patos.
Okay.
And everybody has an alias, and everyone knows each other. Everyone knows where you live. It's very, very tight knit in the country.
Yeah.
The city life is a little bit different. It's business and commerce. It's hustle and bustle. Toko is more relaxing. It's like a kuna matata.
Yeah.
So no worries. Island time, island vibe.
Yeah.
Very, very similar to our sister island, which is Tobago. But there's huge difference. But what I have done over the years is I've been able to master the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Creating that balance in the city. When I'm out there doing educational programs and doing all the great work with my brand, with our brand at the House of Angostura, of course, with our rum, bitters, and amaro.
Yeah.
And when I go back to the country, it's more of a relaxed, Mother Nature at the best, beautiful ocean, the Atlantic Ocean meets the Caribbean Sea. It's a very, very different experience and atmosphere.
Yeah. So you talk about balance. Have you had any issues with the work-life balance taking on this role? Because I know you do travel a lot, right? So you go all over the U.S. And the globe, right? You can kind of travel across.
Man, once you love what you do, it's not work anymore.
Okay.
And over the years, I've been able to find that balance. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And that's why I always promote and encourage bartenders when it comes to bartender health and well-being. You have to find that balance.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, Patrick, we we focus a lot on the establishment and what our role is, or our roles are,
Yeah.
and what is needed to be done. And a lot of times we are sidetracked from the reality of just going to the doctor, getting a little checkup, before you start your shift, maybe doing some stretches.
Yeah.
These are things that we don't do. We don't taking time for yourself. What about a vacation? Does that word exist in your vocabulary?
Yeah.
So these things are things that we need to pay attention to, because it really will determine your lifespan, your shelf life, as well as your ability to be able to create beautiful experiences and moments for guests.
Yeah.
That human resource aspect to the industry is critical. The same way that spirits don't drink themselves, cocktail don't make themselves.
Yep.
The bartender does
Yep.
that. So all aspect of bartending and bartender well-being, I think is very, very important. Creating that balance had to be done many, many years ago.
Yeah.
Because I have a 15-year-old son.
Yeah.
And as much as I travel a lot and share all the stories, of course, on our brands, it's important for me to always fall back on my health as well, and ensure that I'm healthy.
Yeah.
Like the cold. It's not something that I'm very, very fond of. I mean, I'm from a tropical island, so when it's cold out, it's not favorable.
Yeah.
That's why I always have a little shot of rum, maybe a little Angostura 7 in my
Okay.
pocket to keep me warm.
Yeah.
But I've learned to adjust over the years. Yeah. And then when you have good friends, you have good company, you have great rum, you don't feel the coldness anymore. So I've learned to master that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I like how you use the phrase shelf life. I think that's a very, very accurate description of how we as bartenders sometimes don't take care of ourselves, and then we got to make sure we're paying attention to the shelf life that we have.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know we work a lot of long hours, and sometimes, like right now in the holiday season, all of us are killing ourselves just to make that holiday cash that's coming in. But
Yeah.
we all also need to take time to make sure we're resetting ourselves and taking care of our health and everything else. I think that was a really good points.
No, I think no, you're actually spot on.
Yeah.
And for many, many years, many moons, we have literally neglected, and I wouldn't just say neglected. I think we've been distracted.
Yes.
And what distracted us is our passion for service. It became that blinder that only allowed us to focus on the consumer. And nothing is wrong with that. I mean, it's important for us to promote great customer service, promote great products and great experiences for our guests.
Yeah.
But you cannot achieve that if you're not healthy.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's always good to make that time, to take that time to reflect. Simple things.
Yeah.
Simple things. Like drinking water. How many water do you drink? The body is 70% of the body is made up of water. How much water do you drink? There is a percentage of water in alcohol, but just sometimes it's just good to have a drink of water.
Yeah.
Do you do basic stretches, like simple stretch that you can do at the bar, just to get? I used to play a lot of football, so just to get your joints going, simple stretch, get it going before you start your shift. This is not something that you often see. You don't often go to a bar and see a bartender stretching before a shift, before his or her shift.
Yeah.
But these are just simple things that you need to do, I think, to keep yourself healthy. And another thing as well, eat, guys.
Yes, for sure. Yes.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
Eating.
Yes.
Eating on time. It's difficult to capture that 3 square meals a day, but even if you have to binge eat, sometimes I do that.
Yeah.
Like I would have like a small container or small pack with just maybe some crackers, some cheese, some little small bites, and at different intervals, like every hour, I would just have like one cracker just to keep it, just to keep me abreast and have a little bit of energy in my system.
Yeah.
But these are just some of the things I think as bartenders, we need to do to keep ourselves, keep ourselves aligned to the future.
Yep.
If there is to be a future for us,
Right.
I think these are things that we need to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Keep ourselves healthy.
Yeah, even in my culinary experience, I remember like we'd be busy on the line and I'd have to do something called, the chefs would call it a jam sandwich. And literally is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich you make on the fly. You drop down behind the bar, you slam it in, then you just keep working.
And and you're right, Patrick, because hotel bars, when you're working at a hotel, these are some of the perks. There's always food to eat. There's always something to eat or nibble there at a hotel. But we have to build this into our program, build it into our psyche, and understand the importance of it. Because it's so easy for us to be distracted, based on the expectations of guests, and wanting to get that expectation. You will go and render that service or that to a guest, and totally neglect the fact that you haven't had breakfast.
You haven't had breakfast. You haven't had your water.
Water.
They get on me because I don't drink enough water. So yes, I know that one very, 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 very much. But for sure.
And to be honest, I'm at a stage in my life where I'm not as young as I used to be, and a lot of times you wait until something drastic happens before we act. Yeah. So I think it's important. The same way how you check your taxes at the end of the year, check your health.
Yes, for sure.
At least once or twice a year, just ensure that everything is on par. Yeah.
It's very important that we take care of ourselves. Awesome. Well, now we can kind of move on to this. This is all great talking points, but let's talk about Angostura. So tell us a little bit about Angostura. I know the history of it briefly, but go ahead and give us the whole walkthrough of the brand.
So Angostura, or the House of Angostura, has a very, very rich history and legacy that dates back 200 years. We are 199 years to date.
Yeah.
And we celebrate 200 years 2024.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because in 1824, in a small town on the bank of the Orinoco River in Venezuela, a young German doctor by the name of Dr. Johann Siegert perfected the formula for Angostura bitters.
Okay.
And in those earlier years, Angostura aromatic bitters was predominantly a medicinal ingredient. It was an ingredient created or mix created to champion two main concerns in the area in those earlier years. One, the quality of the water. If you look at South America and the Amazon, there's a lot of rivers and ravines and water courses. But the quality of the water in those earlier years was very bad, very polluted. And, Angostura bitters really helped to remedy stomach problems.
Yeah.
But a lot of these guys were coming from Europe, and where Europe is to Venezuela, to South America, man, it's far. Yeah. It took me 6 hours in a plane to get to Houston today.
Yeah.
Imagine you taking a boat. It's going to take you a couple of days. And we all know that motion sickness, seasickness, again, Angostura bitters helped to remedy that. Yeah. But at the end of the 1800s, when the good doctor passed away, his three sons, Don Carlos, Luis, and Roberto, moved their father's, they took their father's recipe and moved the business to Trinidad. Okay. Why Trinidad? Well, Trinidad is the most southern, Trinidad and Tobago are the most southern islands in the Caribbean, but we are only 7 miles away from Venezuela.
Okay.
It's very, very close.
Oh, wow, okay.
So there are many possibilities that suggest that the good doctor in his earlier years would have carried his kids to Trinidad for vacation.
Yeah.
He even had family or cousins or relatives living in Trinidad.
Okay. Because
Trinidad in those earlier years was a British colony. And where Trinidad is located, nesting between North, South America, and of course Europe, was a perfect transshipment point for business and commerce.
Okay.
In the early 1900s as well, Trinidad struck oil.
Okay.
The first exploration of oil began in those earlier years. So there was a lot of promise on this small twin republic called Trinidad and Tobago. They set up shop on George Street, Port of Spain, in the heart of the city.
Okay.
But later down in the years, they moved just about approximately 5 kilometers east from the city to a community called Laventille.
Okay.
Yeah, called Laventille. Now, in those earlier years, Angostura were known as the masters for bitters. And one of the reasons why the boys went to Trinidad as well, I think one of the main reasons was there's one ingredient in Angostura aromatic bitters that we don't really consider the secret. And it's that neutral cane spirit that is used to extract the botanicals used to make our bitters. Now, Angostura aromatic bitters is a combination of secret herbs, spices, barks, botanicals that we extract those flavors from.
Yeah.
It's blended, allowed to sit for 3 months in these inert containers, where we allow them to marry, or we say kusume.
Okay.
Yeah, marry together, allow those flavors to marry together. Now, in the earlier years, my grandmom, she spoke patois.
Okay.
You know, which is a broken French. So kusume, we allow those flavors to marry together. Now, this is then bottled and, of course, distributed throughout the world. So every single authentic bottle of Angostura aromatic bitters that you see comes from Trinidad.
100% from Trinidad.
It's not made anywhere else in the world.
Okay.
Now, that neutral cane spirit technically comes from our distillery. Now, in those earlier years, Angostura didn't have a distillery. Seagate and Sons, they had their operation for bitters.
Okay.
But Don Carlos, the eldest of the 3 brothers, he had a vision. And his vision was to propel his brand into the future.
Yeah.
And he believed the only way to do that was to perfect the quality of the base ingredient. And it was also a reason, or one of the main reasons, why they moved to Trinidad.
Okay.
Because in the earlier years, Trinidad had over 50 sugarcane mills.
Yeah.
The first sugarcane mill opened its doors in 1787, known as La Perouse Estate. That was the first sugarcane mill.
Okay.
But Patrick, if you want to follow or understand the history of rum, all you need to do is follow the history of sugar.
Yeah.
Because anywhere there's sugar in abundance, the reality is there is rum in abundance. Yeah. And rum as a category coming from the region, it wasn't just Trinidad alone producing rums. There were neighboring islands. So to access rum to make, or a neutral cane spirit to make their bitters, it was easy.
Yeah.
Hence moving to Trinidad.
Yeah.
You know, the definition of the word cocktail was first seen in the Colombian repository. I believe the year was 1808. And it stated a cocktail is defined as a spirit of any kind, water, sugar, and bitters.
Yeah.
So bitters in those earlier years played a very important role. Now the question is, if Seagates weren't producing rums in those earlier years, they were the master of bitters, who was producing rums? Well, Manuel Fernandez.
Okay.
Not only the Seagates came, but the Fernandez came. And we still do have some brands within our portfolio that reminisces of Fernandez, like Fernandez Black Label, Fernandez VAT 19, Angostura 1919, Premium 1919 is an original Fernandez template in 1932.
Okay.
Mr. Fernandez, Manuel Fernandez, a Portuguese craftsman, made Trinidad his home. And what he did was he incorporated his love and passion for sherry and wine, and incorporated that aspect of his craftsmanship into his rum making ability. He loved to experiment and use different types of cask. Now, all our rums at the distillery, we use ex-bourbon,
Okay.
American oak, to age our rums. However, Mr. Fernandez had the largest rum stock, not just in the Caribbean, in the world.
Okay.
Seagate and Sons acquired Fernandez, pretty much around the late 50s,
Okay.
end of the 40s, early 40s, late 50s. And when you look at the House of Angostura and what it really stands for, you have two powerhouses really and truly coming together to create this unique brand, the masters of bitters and the masters of rum.
Yeah.
Now, over the years, Angostura has devoted and dedicated a lot of time, effort towards, our processes that involves making our rums, deconstructing them, looking at them from all different aspects, and how we can better the quality of the liquids that we create out there for our consumers. And what really makes us stand out at the distillery or at the House of Angostura is the mere fact that even though rums is from the region, you have brilliant rums that are being made in Barbados, Jamaica, Grenada, Guyana. Trinidad rums, or the House of Angostura, is very, very unique. And what makes it unique is not just the fact that we produce the world's #1 bitters. So the same brand that is producing the world's #1 bitters is the same brand that's producing these rums, which is very, very beneficial to consumers.
Yep.
Because with the same enthusiasm and craftsmanship that we put into our bitters, we put that into our rums. But more importantly is that appreciation for the category by the people of the region. Rum is synonymous to the region, and it's a way of life. And 15 years ago, let's say 20 years ago, 20 years ago, I stopped drinking rum. And let me look at the camera when I say this.
Yeah.
Like 20 years ago, I stopped drinking rum, and I started drinking Angostura.
Okay.
And the reason for this is Angostura is much more than rum. It's an institution. It's a way of life.
Yeah.
I grew up seeing my uncle, and he would stand across the street at his local watering hole, which was Albert Nixon's shop, a rum shop.
Yeah.
And he would sit there with 4 of his friends on a small wooden stool, had a clear bottle with a liquid in it. I didn't know what it was. I was like 9 years old. And they were standing there and they were laughing. But they were taking turns at this bottle and really trying to understand what was really going on. It was a bit confusing for me because these guys were laughing relentlessly. But what were they doing? Are they trying to overthrow the government? What are they plotting to overthrow the government or take over the world? Or are they reminiscing of a time that once was, where they shared a moment through time? And it drew to me then that what my uncle and his friends, Uncle Parker, what they were doing pretty much, or what they had in their possession, I believe, was elements of what we call the first time machine.
Okay.
Because that is what it was. It was an experience that allowed or created a bond amongst menfolk, a bond that could never be broken.
Yeah.
Understanding this really gave me a different perspective on the House of Angostura and the category of rum.
Yeah.
In relation to the way people of Trinidad and Tobago and the region really appreciate rum. When someone gets married, we celebrate. We go to that reception, we drink rum.
Yeah.
When someone dies, we celebrate his or her journey. and the contribution that they would have made while being here with us. So it's a universal aspect, a universal experience that is rum.
Yeah.
That is Trinidad, that is the Caribbean on a whole.
Yeah. How many rum distilleries are on the island? Where you at in Trinidad?
I was looking forward to this question,
Yeah.
man. We're the last distillery standing.
Okay.
You know, I hope in the future there may be developments where Angostura may decide to go at it again and expand, maybe in the south of the island, or who knows, maybe Tobago.
Okay.
But we're the only distillery standing on the island. Fernandez was the major player outside of Angostura in those earlier years. But with the acquisition of Fernandez, we are the last distillery. We are the only distillery, and that is what makes Angostura unique. That is what makes Angostura special.
Okay. Yeah.
And when you order a drink at the bar, and you ask the bartender for Angostura 7-year-old rum or 1824, even 1919, what you are enjoying is a rum that is 100% Trinidadian. Yeah, 100% Trinidadian. And the flavor profile of our rums are very, very unique.
Yeah.
Our master distiller, John Georges, he loved to say our rums are very well behaved.
Okay.
We have the most well behaved rums in the Caribbean. And when he say behave or behavior, he's really speaking to the flavor profile, not being too aggressive, just creating beautiful harmony that a consumer can love, can appreciate, can really enjoy. And a bartender as well can really take and pull out and really work within his program to create an amazing libation.
Yeah.
So that is what we look at. That's what we look forward to when it comes to rum.
Yeah. Awesome. What's your favorite mark that Angostura makes?
Oh man, Angostura 7
Okay.
is my everyday. And I think I was reading an article recently that you need to have a rum for for several aspects of your life.
Yeah.
So you have your everyday run-of-mill rum that you would drink. That's your go-to. Angostura 7 is my go-to.
Yeah.
But when I have friends that come to my home that are whiskey drinkers, my home is a rum house.
Yeah.
So there's no whiskey or very little. Angostura 7, because of the flavor profile, gives you a lot of those highlights that are associated to that of a whiskey. Some of the smoky, rich and bold flavors, a lot of drier nuances that you get coming through this particular blend.
Yeah.
But apart from your everyday, you have your limited editions and your special stash that you will have, or special blend that you will have tapped away.
Yeah.
So that it's just on special occasions you bring that out. Maybe on Christmas morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's your birthday or your neighbor's birthday, you bring that out. But it really shows or tells of the category and the versatility of the category of rum. That there's a rum in our portfolio for every palate.
Yeah.
So if you like something that is more fruit flavored or fruit forward in respect to flavor, we have a rum for you. Angostura 5 has this citrus note that cuts straight through the middle. Very, very, very fruity and floral in respect to flavor. It's beautiful when it comes to creating cocktails.
Yeah.
But then when you jump into Angostura 1824, which is our 12-year-old, oh man, the aroma hits you immediately. Yeah. It's like forest flowers, and it reminds me of my mom soaking fruits for Christmas.
Okay.
So she would take raisins and dates and prunes, and she would put it in this huge bucket, and she would half the bucket. She would cover the fruits with rum.
Okay.
Usually, she will use Angostura 1919 depending on her budget.
Yeah.
But she always put a great quality rum in there, and she will cover that bucket and allow it to sit there for at least 9 days.
Yeah.
When she pull the covers out, oh
I can only imagine that
my.
smell. Yeah.
I'm at the front of the yard of my home, and my mom is in the kitchen, and I can get the aroma
Yeah.
of the dry fruit and of course the rum just filling every single space in the house. And it reminds me of that. 1824 gives you that, it reminisces of fruit, dry fruit.
Yeah.
And then what about Angostura 1787, our 15-year-old expression?
Yeah.
If you want something a little bit more heavier, a little more congeners, a little bit more flavor, a little dry at the end,
Yeah.
Angostura 1787.
Yeah.
So there's something within our portfolio for everyone. And I think that's why rum is celebrated on the island of Trinidad and Tobago, because there's something there tailored for everyone who enjoys our products.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that since Angostura is the only distillery in Trinidad, where are you guys sourcing your cane from? So is there plantations on the island, or are you sourcing it from somewhere?
Well, that's it. So all our rums are made from molasses, and many years ago, the focus was on not just the terroir in respect to where the cane is being grown, but sugarcane is no longer grown in Trinidad.
Okay.
Economies of scale, the economics doesn't really stand out or stand up in respect to the demand of it. Trinidad is a small island. So what we do is that we import our molasses, but what is very important is the bricks concentration level
Okay.
in the molasses that are imported. We look for a bricks level that is anywhere over 50%.
Yeah.
So 60, maybe 65, if you're lucky, works best, because during our fermentation process, we have a special strain of yeast
Okay.
that is over 65 years old, almost as old as my dad,
Yeah.
but it's a special strain that belongs to the House of Angostura. It's ours,
Okay.
and it's very important because it helps us to generate an ABV, or that conversion from sugar to alcohol in those early fermentation stages, to anywhere between 7 to 8%, which is perfect. It's ideal for us. You know, this particular yeast strain we have used for many, many years,
Yeah.
but it really helps us to develop a lot of the initial flavors in our rum making process.
Okay.
So the flavors that you get at the end, a lot of the initial flavors, congeners, that development of congeners and flavor compounds is developed during the fermentation.
Yeah.
You know, distillation is just to separate. You know, you want the alcohol, you don't want the water and some of the impurities inside there. You want to pull that out. That is what distillation does.
Yeah.
But distillation for us is also very critical, very important. If you want to master distillation, you just need to have someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And our master distiller, John Georges, in 1982, kind of selling out my age, in 1982, when my mom was giving birth to me, John Georges was at the House of Angostura, filling out his first application form. You know, he has been at the helm, or had been at the company ever since.
Okay.
So he has a very, very rich history at the House of Angostura. But his role is very critical and very important, because his role is to extract the heart and soul of the distillate,
Yeah.
which is then given to our blenders. Now, all our blenders at the distillery are females.
Okay. Awesome.
Now, I'm not saying this to be sexist,
Yeah.
but in the Caribbean, you know, growing up, we saw our mom and our grandmom in the kitchen. They were the ones in the kitchen cooking the food. Where was grandpa and dad? Well, they were in the field gathering the food. So it's this special ability to be able to understand flavors that has worked for us throughout the years. Being able not just to blend our bitters, the botanicals to make our bitters, but blend or create those amazing blends that really allows us to create a world-class product.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's very interesting how many blenders do you have?
Our blending team comprises of approximately six individuals.
That's awesome. Okay.
This is just the core blenders. Our head blender, our master blender, Carol Homer. But Carol retired just about a year ago. She does a lot of work with us still.
Okay.
But Ariana is a new kid on the block, and she's not really new kid. She's been around for quite some time. But Ariana has taken the mantle of leading the troop. Ariana, as well as Carol and oh my lord, the name is just on my lips. Anne-Marie O'Brien.
Okay.
They are all responsible for creating a lot of the limited editions that we see today.
Yeah.
My role, I work with the blending team as well,
Okay.
very closely. I share the consumer perspective in respect to flavor, taste, and what the expectations are, what consumers are looking for.
Yeah.
With the blending team. So my job is to evaluate, appraise, and of course provide feedback that is then taken to the lab and reconstructed.
Okay.
And of course, continuous evaluation is done before we come to a final piece or masterpiece.
Yeah. For sure.
So I work very closely with our NPD team
Okay.
to create or craft a lot of the limited editions that you see today.
That's cool.
Just last night, we launched Angostura Symphony.
I think I saw something about this. Okay.
Angostura Symphony
Okay.
just launched last night. I missed that. I was catching a flight.
Yeah.
But Angostura Symphony will be out pretty much in the first quarter of 2024.
Okay.
It's a limited edition that plays into our cast collection series.
Okay.
That has been crafted by our blenders. It's an amazing piece.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about Angostura is that when we say a limited edition, it stays limited edition.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no rerun. There's no, you know what, we're gonna do a bottle or two. We're gonna do 2 cases because, no, it doesn't work that way.
Okay.
Limited edition stays limited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many bottles on this one are you guys?
Oh man, if I can get that information for you.
Okay.
I don't have the number in respect to how much bottles it is, but I can get that information.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, the next kind of thing I want to talk about is this stick here on the table. I know most bartenders have seen it before, but for those that haven't seen it before, what is that stick?
Man,
most Caribbean thing?
most Caribbean kids have seen this before.
Yeah.
Well, this is a Swizzle stick.
Yeah.
You know, it's an actual branch of a tree.
Yeah.
It's a natural branch of a tree, and it's also known as a lily stick.
Lily.
Bois lily.
Bois lily.
Bois meaning wood, and lily meaning little. So, during our carnival in Trinidad, we have something called a stick fighting competition, where the stick fighter is what you call a boisman. A boisman. He's a woodman.
Okay.
And he uses this stick to pretty much defeat his opponent.
Okay.
In a guile. So the guile is the ring.
Okay.
And we use a very overproof rum from the House of Angostura called Forest Park Punching Rum,
Okay.
which is no less than 75% proof.
Okay.
And there's a ritual. And the ritual is where they will take the Forest Park Punching Rum and spread it all around the ring,
Okay.
and then they will light it with fire.
Okay. Okay.
And the belief is that the spirits of the descendants, right, our ancestors, will help to protect the boisman.
Okay.
Okay, it helps to protect the boisman. But a bois, technically means wood. So boisman, bois lily, wood, little wood. Now these sticks are as old as the sugarcane plantations themselves.
Okay.
in that the workers that worked on these plantations didn't have the fortune as their masters to, or bosses, to be able to acquire silverware and cutleries to help prepare their food. So what they will do is that they will go to the back, and here I say food, they will go to the back of the estate or plantation, and they will cut a branch of a sassafras or allspice tree.
Okay.
The ideal was just to ensure that the material that is being used is not poisonous.
Okay.
You don't want to cut a swizzle stick and when you swizzle your drink and you die.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the goal has always been to ensure that this stick was not poisonous.
Yeah.
Now, these trees are indigenous to the Caribbean region and they grow in our backyards at home. Now, swizzling, or the art of swizzling, did not start or generated in the bar, as most believe it did. Swizzling started in the kitchen, as a lot of techniques that we use in the bar today. Now, there are two dishes from the island of Trinidad, one being callaloo, which is spinach leaves reduced in coconut milk, then swizzled using a swizzle stick to create a paste. Now, follow me. Hope you're seeing where I'm going with this. And then we have dal on the East Indian side of Trinidad. And the dal is chickpeas reduced with local seasoning and flavors like cilantro, shadobeni, pimento peppers. And then you use a swizzle stick that is called a dal gutni.
Okay.
So the East Indians, they call it a dal gutni to make an amazing paste. Now what I'm getting at is before there were blenders, there were swizzle sticks.
Well, that's cool. Yeah.
But the art of swizzling, really helps to aerate your cocktail or to add air to your cocktail, as well as help to mix the ingredients within this cocktail. Now, the late Queen Elizabeth, she was very fond of her classic champagne cocktail, which is the sugar cubes saturated with Angostura bitters, topped up with a little bit of champagne. But she was not very fond of the excessive bubbles. So she would put a swizzle stick into her champagne cocktail and just swizzle just a little bit just to remove some of that excess bubbles.
That's cool.
Yeah. So swizzling, or the art of swizzling, is very, very important for my region, of course, Trinidad and Tobago, because it was pretty much is the birthplace of swizzle drinks as well as swizzle cocktails and food.
That's awesome.
It was also a tool or measure used to install discipline, in that every Caribbean home had a swizzle stick.
Yeah.
The only thing is that I wish my mom's swizzle sticks were this small. They were humongous. They were big swizzle stick that she will often, grab a stick or two and to ensure that we always behaved ourselves. You know, and we did. We behaved ourselves because we know mommy had swizzle sticks. But it's a very important tool used to make our national drink, the Angostura, or what we call the Queen's Park Swizzle.
Queen's Park Swizzle.
Some people call it the Angostura Swizzle, but the Queen's Park Swizzle. And the Queen's Park Swizzle was created at the famous Queen's Park Hotel in the early 1900s. So imagine you're going to the Queen's Park Hotel in the early 1900s, man. This is state of the art. It's one of the first buildings to receive what we call modern day electricity in Trinidad. And you walk up to the long brass rail bar at the Queen's Park Hotel, and there's a bartender standing right there with a swizzle stick making the house cocktail that you will get on entry, the Queen's Park Swizzle. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, Ray, thanks for being here today. This is very, very insightful. I didn't know that the Swizzle stick was actually the original blender. That was something that I learned today, so it's pretty awesome.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
What handle can people follow you at on Instagram if somebody wants to follow you or reach out to you, store to you yourself personally?
So Ray Edwards Toko, so R-A-Y, so it's RAYEDWARDS, Ray Edwards Toko. And Toko, T-O-C-O, is where I'm from. It's a beautiful fishing and farming village all the way northeast on the beautiful Twin Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, home to the House of Angostura.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. My name is Patrick, and again, today's topic is going to be posted the following week. And then to end this show, again, what we talked about is stay hydrated, make sure we take care of each other.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome.
Patrick, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming in.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.